So the first thing I do when I start my day is I drink a big glass of water to hydrate, because audiobooks takes a lot of hydration and a lot of warm up. I have a 9 a.m. job that I do recording news articles, and that's about a 25 to 35 minute job. And then from there, I walk my dog, I get out of the booth, I move my body a little bit. At 10:15, I do my first audiobook recording session of the day. From 10:15 to 12:15, I try to get 1 finished hour of recorded audio.
I hope I didn't lose magic over that. Looney's voice bounds up the attic stairs and bashes into the walls.
12:15 is when my stomach starts rumbling and the microphone will pick it up, and so I need to take lunch. While I'm having lunch, I will check emails. I'll check auditions on ACX if there's anything that looks good for me that I want to audition for. I will also check my social media. Twitter and Facebook are good not just for me to see what's happening in the world, but also what is happening in voiceover and audiobook industry. I try at least once a week to meet up with another friend that is either a freelancer or specifically works in voiceover to talk about things that only freelancers or voiceover actors understand. Either we go for coffee, we will go for lunch, and just kind of get out in the world. And then at 2 p.m., it's time to get back in the booth and do my second session of the day. So I record from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., get my second hour in. If I'm not done, I'll take a break at 4 p.m., knowing I have to go back in the booth to record whatever I didn't get done yet. But if I am finished, then I prep an audition, or I start reading whatever book I'm prepping to be the next thing I record. I always read the book before I record it in my booth. And so once I've read the book once, then if I have questions, I'll reach out to the publisher or the producer or the author, depending on where this book came from. And once all of that is set, I just get in the booth and I start recording. And then try to make sure if there was an email that came in that day that I reply, and then a lot of vocal rest in the evening. Hello, my name is Caitlin Kelly. I am an audiobook narrator, and I have recorded 28 books and counting with ACX.
Welcome back to ACX University. This is our 5th panel of 6 for the summer semester in 2016. And today's session, we have joining us Caitlin Kelly.
Hello.
Caitlin is originally from Cleveland, Ohio, moved to New York to pursue her theatrical training at NYU Tisch School of the Arts. She has a BFA in drama and studied musical theater at Cap 21. Caitlin's been doing voiceover since 2009, got her start in VO while living in Tokyo, Japan. Since diving into audiobook narration in 2014, Caitlin has recorded 35 books. Caitlin can be heard daily reading the news on smashed.co and weekly in the Time for Kids app. To hear more from Caitlin, check out her site, www.caitlinkellyvo.com. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So we all saw that video, got a little peek at a day in the life of Caitlin Kelly. That's obviously a condensed version, only at about 2.5 minutes. So I have some questions, and I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into what your daily routine is like and what it takes to be a freelance audiobook producer, putting all that together.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
So let's start at the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit more about the beginning of your career? How did you go from acting then to focusing on voiceover, and then voiceover getting into audiobooks? How did that all go?
Well, my whole life, I've actually wanted to do voiceover. That's always been my dream. From the moment I saw Little Mermaid, it was a huge inspiration to me, and I thought, how can I be a mermaid? Well, that's not possible, so how can I be the voice in an animation? I learned that Jodie Benson, who did the voice of that film, was a musical theater girl. Mm-hmm. Okay, so get into musical theater. I went to acting school. I did my training. And pretty much anybody who would give me the time of day, anybody who would give me a moment, I would say to them, or if they asked, what do you want to do? I want to be the voice of a Disney princess in an animated feature musical film. Okay.
All right, that's a very specific.
It's very specific.
Right, yeah.
You know, and then that starts a conversation. And so from there, I was able to get an introduction to somebody to help me cut a demo, to do voiceover narration and voiceover commercial. And then met a manager, I met an agent, and it just kind of spirals from there.
So your initial, the whole point of going to acting school, you always had kind of like musical theater / voiceover in mind?
Yes, I always wanted to do, I mean, I love acting. I love acting on stage. I love the theater. But ultimately, the thing that I was always very passionate about was voiceover and learning that it's a whole world in of itself. I really loved cartoons when I was little.
You didn't?
Yeah, I'm not very good at drawing, so I wasn't going to be animating my own. And I just, always had that as my goal. And then when I moved to Tokyo, and I really didn't know anyone, I mean, it was really, I had no connections. I just went over there, and anybody that would talk to me, I said, this is what I'm interested in.
And so you started getting jobs in there doing what kind of VO? Actual animation VO or?
Yeah, so I mean, all kinds of things. If it was commercials or a lot of children's educational material. So I did like a daily radio show for Japanese children through NHK, where they are learning English. It's part of the English curriculum. So for the 11-year-old age children, they listen to this little clip. They have assignments based on it every day. They talk about it in their class. And it was like a little serial show every day. And I played a 12-year-old boy named Shokun, and I did that for a year. I worked with the Ministry of Japan, or the education minister in the ministry.
The minister of the ministry?
Yeah, hold on. It wasn't Harry Potter. It wasn't like that. It was, I worked on curriculum for okay, I'm losing all my words here.
You're not in
I
the
met
booth
the
now.
Minister
It's
of
okay.
Education
for
Japan. And while I was working on a job to work on curriculum for early childhood Japanese learning English.
Right.
Okay.
So there are dozens, hundreds, thousands perhaps of Japanese children that now speak English because of you.
Yeah.
You have affected their lives.
Exactly. They hear me saying, the ball is red.
Can you say that in Japanese? Am I putting that? Or it was all in English, right?
So it was all in English, yeah. I mean, I don't remember how to say ball.
I can't say it in Japanese either, so it's totally okay. So you're doing some of the shorter form voiceover over in Japan.
Yeah.
And how does that ends up transitioning to audiobook work, which I'm sure you can speak to, is a very different form of VO than the short form stuff.
So different. So in 2012, I moved back to New York, and just a totally different industry and way of doing business here in the States. So I took a commercial voiceover class. I went in Backstage.com, and I went through Backstage University. They were offering classes, and I took a commercial class with Johnny Heller, who many audiobook narrators should know. And I learned that he is a prolific audiobook narrator, and he said, why don't you take my audiobook class? And I was really intimidated, and I thought, I couldn't possibly do that long form. That seems really hard. I don't think that's right for me.
Were you an audiobook listener before then? Were you familiar with the format at all?
I was familiar with the format. I hadn't listened to, I'm going to be honest, I hadn't listened to a lot of audiobooks. I was a rabid podcast listener.
Okay.
I would get through podcasts like nobody's business.
Right.
It was an easy transition to start listening to audiobooks. But yeah, I took his audiobook class because I wasn't working. I had nothing to do. I mean, I had nothing to lose. And it just was really interesting. I love to read anyway. So, that's the first thing. You're like, well,
nice
sure.
way to combine.
Yeah. If I'm reading anyway, let's see.
Right.
What is this about? And I just kind of took to it like a fish to water. And I just...
Or a mermaid.
Yeah, or a mermaid, finally. And I really just loved it. I love it. I think it's amazing because you get to be all the characters. You're not hindered by your physical appearance as an actor. And obviously, I'm not going to be... I have a very specific voice type, but I get to play all of the characters, the bad guys, the good guys, everything.
The guys,
exactly.
right.
I get to play the male parts too. So it's really amazing and satisfying from an actor's point of view.
Do you find that, and I've heard this before, I'm curious if you agree, that your stage training specifically helped you in audiobook narration and in the booth? I hear that you really learn to like play to the back of the room and project and kind of create that world more so than you might if you're doing like screen work. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. My acting training helps a lot for building characters, creating their backstory, being very specific in every little nuance of a delivery, and having the characters very much grounded in reality. My acting training has been imperative in creating good characters. As far as delivery goes, you don't want to play to the back of the room when you're in a booth, and so mic technique, which I learned when I first started in voiceover, you know, it's great to be able to project and have a really strong, healthy diaphragm and respiratory system, but for mic technique, it's just a totally different delivery.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Are you still involved in coaching or training at this point? Like, are you still either taking classes to learn more, or have you turned that back around to train others?
Oh, wow. I'm always looking for education opportunities for myself to get better and to grow in my own career. I am always looking for coaching sessions.
Do you have any specific that you could recommend to the audience that you've done that you really love?
Yeah,
Feel free to shout them out.
Johnny Heller's audiobook class he does with Edge is amazing. If you are looking to kind of get up to the next level in your performance and technique, I highly, highly recommend Paul Allen Rubin. He was definitely a game changer for me. I know Andy Arndt posted about something. I'm a huge fan of her work. She's amazing. And she posted about being in New York and doing a class, and I'm hoping that happens because I will absolutely be in that room and hanging on every word. Johnny Heller organizes workshops and things all the time, online workshops. Audiobook Publishers Association.
The APA.
They do webinars for narrators, so that's really accessible if you're not in New York.
Right. And maybe the second panel that we did for ACX University on the genre deep dive.
Exactly.
So
that was fantastic.
A lot out there, and it seems like there's more and more coming up every
day.
So it sounds like it's important not just to get the initial training to learn at the beginning of your career, but do you find it important to stay up on that and constantly either be reminding yourself of what's important or learning new things?
Yes. I mean, the acting training, I think that you should, as an actor, I think you should approach this as an actor. And so I think that that's first and foremost and paramount before you start looking at ways to, you know, what medium you want to work in. Make sure you get your proper training and know the history of acting and the history of audiobooks too, if you want to go into audiobooks. As far as currently, going to class too, because this is such an isolating line of work, which, you know, is good if you're an introvert, but it's also really nice to be around other people who understand what it is you're doing, what it is you're trying to accomplish, what you're working towards. So when you go to a class, you meet people who are like-minded. And from these classes, not only have I met wonderful teachers and learned so much, but it's the relationships with other students that has been really amazing in helping me build my career.
Well, that's a question I have later, but since you've brought it up, we can talk about that a little bit now, is the idea of the networking through classes and through learning and things like that. It's interesting, not just the things you would actually learn, but do you, the relationships you forge at these classes, have you landed books from them? Have you gotten an intro to somebody that really furthered your career? Does it have side benefits other than just learning stuff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's part of, even before the networking, it's just your sanity. You know, I have friends I text with daily, you know, if something comes up, or just last night I was on the phone with a friend. She was feeling, you know, insecure about some delivery of of a book she was working on, and she was feeling very stressed. She asked, could I listen to it? And I said, of course. And she's incredible, and it was amazing, and she had nothing to worry about. But it's nice to have somebody that you can,
like a sanity check.
A sanity check, a soundboard.
somebody to bounce ideas off of.
And then hopefully that leads to
Yeah, I
you
mean-
meet this person who knows that person who all of a sudden they heard your book. And
Yeah,
they
I mean,
want-
even to be a part of this panel.
Right.
Can I shout out
Yeah, yeah.
Dara Rosenberg.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Dara introduced us, and
Yep.
because of that introduction, now I'm sitting here talking with you, Scott, about full-time narration.
Are you so you have the benefit of having lived in big cities where there
Yes.
might be these networks like
Yes.
in Tokyo or in New York. Are you parts of any forums, or do you
Oh,
do
yeah.
any of this online for people out there that might not be in a major city where they can go and do this?
Yes.
Yep.
There is a very active Facebook group, ACX Narrators and Producers, I think it's
Yep,
called,
yep.
and it is so active. I think if you post something in there, you will get a response within 5 minutes if you have a question about something. So shout out to anybody who's watching from that forum. You know, and you've got people from all walks of life, global, people who are working on audiobooks globally, who are doing things. Everybody has a different opinion about how to produce these
Right.
books. And so it's definitely a great resource to find out what people have tried and been successful with prior to, when you jump into the
Right.
audiobook pool yourself.
Crowdsourcing, right? That group
Yeah.
knowledge, that hive mind of
Yeah.
that's what the internet brings is you,
Yeah.
you can go and we've done this before. Everything, like I recently moved apartments. Everything, I'm just like, coffee tables? What are the best coffee tables? You can kind of,
Yeah.
I guess that applies for the VO world as well.
Yeah, and when we're all working in our booths or our closets or
Right.
wherever, we're eager for any kind of human contact.
Interaction.
Yeah,
Right.
human interaction.
You can create a world for yourself via audiobooks, but you need to be in the real world at sometimes too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that forum, I've learned so much from it. And there's forums for different DAWs. There's forums for different types of voiceover, so not just audiobooks, but animation. I mean, I think there's e-learning voiceovers forums.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, all very active.
Moving away from that topic a little bit,
Okay.
one other thing you mentioned in the video is reading the news first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
You mentioned Time for Kids and Smash.co. I'm curious how that differs from audiobook narration in like a performance aspect. So let's start there. How does that differ from doing an audiobook? You're doing news in the morning, audiobook in the afternoon.
Oh, okay. So when I think of an audiobook, I think of it as, a bit of a luxury. Somebody's sitting down and they're going to lock into a story and you're painting a beautiful picture for somebody. They're listening to the story and creating the images in their mind. When you're reading the news, people are just trying to get information.
Right.
So while I may indulge in certain language in the audiobook, I'll, take liberal pauses and really, so people, my listener's mind can create the story in their
Right.
mind
Right.
as I'm telling it. For the news, I just try to punch out, it's a much punchier delivery. I punch out important names, facts, and also depending on the
Type of news story,
the
I
type of
imagine.
news.
Right.
So if I'm reading for Reuters, I'm going to do that delivery much differently than if I'm reading for Slate,
Right.
for example.
Right.
Because there's like the NPR kind of delivery, and then there's like a classic news anchory
Right.
delivery.
And then there's Time for Kids, which I imagine is
Yeah,
different.
so Time for Kids, that's more children's education. I'm not going to read as quickly
Right.
because it's usually for kindergartners and second graders. So I'm not going to read as quickly, and it's going to be very much like, know your audience and who you're talking to. So
Right.
for a 5-year-old, I'm going to deliver much differently than for an 8-year-old because they're interested in different things, and different things are going to leap out at them.
That's one of the first things that I picked up in your answer was it sounds like you're very intentional about thinking about your audience from the beginning.
Yes.
And that sounds like a really good place to start, regardless of what you're doing. Think about who your audience is and how you want to deliver it to them. I'm enlightened because
Oh, thanks.
I've been in the audiobook business for a little while, and that's not something I hear people talking a lot about. Maybe it's just me, but it sounds like a really good tip.
It's helpful if you're kind of confused about how you want to approach something. It's helpful to think, well, who's listening to this, and try to put yourself in their shoes or research that demographic, or if you have a resource where you can ask
that source directly. So especially for the children's education stuff, my mother's a preschool teacher, and so I was always going to work with her so I've always been around really small children. And when I was in Japan, the first job, so I could get a visa and stay there, was working at an international preschool. And so I've always been around very small children, not just like 10-year-olds, but toddlers and really young, early childhood aged. And you can see that there's, even between a 2.5-year-old and a 3-year-old, there's just a 6-month difference, but it's vast, and what they need is different.
Right.
Yeah.
So thinking about your audience and who you're talking to.
It can also help you kind of lock in on how you want to approach material.
Right. Very cool.
Thanks.
So the second half of my question was, do you find it difficult to go from that type of read in the morning when it's more informative, or it's punchier, maybe you said, or more straightforward, to audiobook work after that? Do you have to almost actually mentally like say to yourself, okay, this is different, or does it just flow at this point? How does that work?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think in the beginning, I did it did take some time. And even now, certain genres, like I do a lot of first-person narration, and most of my friends and colleagues do a lot of third-person narration. When I do third-person narration, it helps for me to listen to something in third person. It helps me to listen to another audiobook narrator, to kind of remind myself what that world is. Right. As far as the news and stuff, early in the morning, my voice is waking up, so I just am making sure that information gets out there in a timely manner. But for the audiobooks, yeah, I guess.
It sounds like it just happens a little bit more naturally.
Yeah,
and
you kind of get used to it.
Intentional thing. I'm sure that's part of it too.
Yeah, I know this is like the worst answer ever,
no, it's not,
but I'm just used to it. I don't know.
Well, I think perhaps it goes back to that intentionality, and perhaps you used to think about it more consciously earlier, and now that you've done it more, it's just kind of second nature at this point.
Yeah, and I would also suggest, too, listening back to your own work. I mean, that seems obvious, I think, but I will sometimes think something I've delivered sounds a certain way, and when I listen back to it, not from inside my head, but through a monitor, a speaker, headphones, whatever, I realize how different it actually was, and how I wasn't able to kind of do what I had hoped. It didn't have the intention on it that I wanted it to. So that's always really helpful, is listening to your work and able to fine tune your delivery and pacing and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about various different types of performance, we do have a question from the audience. Somebody out there would like to know what genres do you typically read? Let's start there.
For me personally.
Yes. Not me. I don't.
No,
this is the genre that I do.
That I read as a narrator, or that I read that I like as a person in the world.
I'm guessing that it would be as a narrator.
As a narrator, if you guessed YA and young adult, I do. Yeah, you would be right. I do a lot of YA. I do a lot of new adult romance, and some children's.
Right.
I've started to do children's, which is what I love. I love, you get to be a little bit more
fantastic.
Yeah, bigger characters, bigger choices, because they're usually, well, not always, but sometimes they're in really silly, crazy situations.
Right. And now, the genres that you mentioned, is that just because that's where you find your voice naturally is appropriate for? Is that why you're in those genres?
Exactly. I have a I know what I sound like, and I don't have any delusions about it. I have a very youthful voice. It's very bright, it's very forward, and it's very youthful. And I'm not going to be asked to do anything with a middle-aged woman as the point of view. Even if it's a mother, that's the point of view. All of the things I've had success in so far have been either high school-aged heroines or just out of college.
I see.
You know, there's like a lot of innocence to the characters that I'm narrating.
And how did you figure out that you say, oh, I know my voice, I know what I sound like? Does that go back to the training? Did you initially have to have somebody sort of tell you that, or how did you figure that out?
How did I figure? I mean, Yeah. Well, as when I was really young, you know, your greatest strengths can also be your greatest weakness. And so my voice has been a source of ridicule sometime when I was growing up. I would get, you sound so whiny, you know, Caitlin, turn it down. Well, you know, everybody gets picked on. Everybody gets picked on when they're little. But my voice is my voice, and I love it. I mean, I can't change it. It is what it is, and I love the work I do, and I'm very grateful that there is a place for my specific skill set and talent in this world. But yeah, now it's like, you know, this is great. Look, here's a adult person who's, you know, functioning in the world, and they sound like a 12-year-old boy. That's amazing, as opposed to actually hiring a 12-year-old boy who's fidgeting and doesn't actually, you know, know what they're doing.
And if you take care of your voice, you could have the luxury of voicing young characters for a long time. And so it sounds like that's another benefit to that too.
Yes, taking care of your voice though.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, okay, that's another question I have coming up later, but since it naturally came up across, so okay, let's get into the question I did have next, which was how many total recording hours are you doing between all the stuff we're talking about? How much are you able to get done per day? And then we'll get into, well, you're doing all that, how do you keep your voice healthy?
Okay, so I aim for, and I work it out when I'm scheduling 2 hours a day of finished audio for audiobooks.
Okay.
That usually then will leave an hour I can get done between the news and auditions and whatever job comes in, because in this line of work, as you are hustling, and I hope you all hustle, hustle guys.
Hustle.
While you're hustling, you never know what's gonna come in. And I always try to make sure I get 2 hours of the audiobook stuff done. That's like the most consistent, stable thing. You can count on it. Like, oh, it's a 10-hour book.
Right.
Okay, that'll take me 5 days to record. However, you never know when you're going to get a sniffle. You never know when you made a bad choice the night before and all of a sudden you don't sound like the 17-year-old girl, and instead you sound like you've been drinking whiskey and smoking for the last 50 years. So when that happens, I always also give myself a day or two, because you just never know. And I'd always rather under-deliver, you know, like, or do you know what I'm saying? Like,
under-promise, over-deliver.
Thank you. I'd rather say, oh, I can get that to you in 7 days, and then give it to you in 5.
Much better than the other way
and
around.
Then, oh, here it is in 7, and where's the book, Caitlin?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And so that sounds like a great just career tip is build yourself in a little bit of extra time and try to get out in front of something can always happen, pop up in life or in the booth or sirens or
exactly, or
neighbors.
You know, and also I think something that was really important when you're scheduling, you're only as good as your word. So if you say you're going to do something, I think it's really important that you do it, and I think it's really important that you respect commitments that you've made. So if you have something already on your schedule and you get a phone call, hey, can you come in and do this really quick 30-minute thing? Be really honest with yourself. Is other work going to suffer because of that? In my experience, I have never lost a client, knock on wood. I have never lost a client because I said, I'm sorry, I'm already booked.
Right. I think that's a fear, a lot of people have, is that they're afraid to say no because this is my one chance to work, or they're going to think I'm pretentious or something. But I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah,
just be very honest with yourself about what you can handle and what you can do, because there's nothing worse than showing up ill-prepared or not giving yourself enough time to get something done, whatever it is. And then when that happens, you know,
it's just a domino effect.
And then the client isn't going to hire you back. So I try to be really, I mean, I'm almost like a little precious about it. Like I'm a little crazed about it, because I think it's really, really important to, if you say you're going to do something, follow through with it. Right. Yeah.
And so getting to, okay, so how many hours of record? So about 3 hours?
Yeah.
An hour later if you don't catch up fully with what you want to do, like you said in the video?
Exactly, yeah. Honestly, with the booth, so when we were doing the filming, when you guys came to my little house, my little apartment, I hadn't been working with the booth very much. I think I had only recorded in there for 1 day. It was still kind of getting set up. I am so confident in what I can produce now and how much I can get done, and the only thing keeping me from doing it is myself. So I have to take really good care of myself so that I can do the work. Because I say 2 hours so that I don't fatigue, but I could probably do 2.5, 3 hours. But let's stick with 2 because you just
play it safe.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So that leads me into the question about so how do you manage your vocal health?
Yeah.
What do you do to take care of yourself if you're doing that much reading?
Yeah, so this is something I actually kind of struggle with. It's really important, but our world isn't very forgiving for people who aren't going to talk in public or in social situations. So, I mean, first, like, concrete things that I can do for myself that I can control are my hydration. I hydrate. I drink a ton of water, lukewarm water, like room temperature water. Ice water is really nice and stuff, but I find that it actually makes my stomach make noise. So if I'm recording, I'm
going to take some cold water now.
Enjoy.
I'm not, I am being recorded, but usually I'm not.
But drinking tons of water, drinking water while I'm recording. What else do I do? Humidifiers. I have humidifiers on all over my apartment constantly. If it's really dry, if I'm traveling, guys, sorry if you're on the West Coast because I know they have water issues,
drought issues.
But I will fill up the sink or I'll fill up the tub because you can feel it. You can feel the hoarseness and like a bit of when it's dry, your vocal folds can get inflamed and then you can injure them.
And then that just causes more and more
it takes longer to recover.
So hydrating, humidifying. Do you pay attention to what you eat at all? Do you avoid things like dairy before going into the booth, or do you are you able to just kind of not really have that be a problem?
I don't think about what I eat as far as mouth noise so much. More as like what is going to upset my stomach, because my stomach talks and it is loud. So that would be a reason for me to avoid dairy. But as far as eating foods, I mean, I like apple cider vinegar and honey in really hot water, as hot as you can stand. I think of it as like a lotion for your vocal folds.
So is that a remedy, like if you feel bad, or that's just you do that like every day?
It's a really good thing. I mean, it's both. I think it's a good thing if you're fatigued, but it's also just a really nice thing to do for your voice. On top of like teas or whatever. But I really, really have been doing apple cider vinegar and honey since college. I started, a voice teacher said, if you're tired and you have to get through and you have no voice and you have all this vocal swelling, here's what you do. And I find it just feels so like a gentle...
just like a warm wave.
It's like giving your vocal folds a nice warm bath to just relax them. Something else I do, take breaks when you're recording. You can do like neck and head massage for your neck muscles and your jaw muscles.
That's a good excuse to go get a massage.
Yeah, but you can kind of just, do yourself. Like right here, I get a lot of tension if you're from the Midwest, because we talk through a smile, all lateral.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, we have a lot of jaw tension.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So to like release it, there's a bundle right here you can massage, and it helps to release those muscles. Also, I mean, getting into anatomy. I'm not a doctor.
Knee bone's connected to the shin bone.
Well, your jawbone is actually, or your jaw muscles, they go over your head, and I hope I'm not saying this wrong, over your head and down to your lower back. And so if you are having back problems, that can affect your mouth and your jaw tension, and then you can be holding tension in your neck or in places, and you won't be able to produce as well, whether it's tightening of your, you fatigue more quickly, or you're tight, or you hurt yourself, whatever it is. So general, like taking care of your whole body and making sure your back is really strong, since it's part of what you're using when you're working. This is a funny one. This is one I learned from Japan. I wear a mask when I go to sleep at night. If you
an eye mask?
Like
a surgical mask.
Yeah, exactly, like something that just loops over your ears. If you sleep with your mouth open or something like that, or if, it's been really hot and humid here in New York, so I've had the air on to kind of dry it out because I've just been sweating profusely. I've been wearing a mask so I don't dry out my nose and my mouth and my throat overnight. And that really helps. I know
might look funny, but
it totally,
who's going to see you except your
right,
other
exactly. But it really, really helps.
So John P. would like you to repeat the recipe for the warm bath for your vocal cords if you can.
Sure. So just boil some hot water like you're making tea and use apple cider vinegar. I use the Bragg's brand. It comes with, they call
it's got like a yellow label. I think I have
it.
It
has a yellow. It has a yellow label, and it's called the Mother, that like stuff in it.
Okay.
Shake it up. You don't.
Oh, the sediment on the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So shake it up and make sure you drink that too, because that's just good for you also.
Okay.
And then, gosh, I mean, as much as you can stand, it smells kind of like feet.
Which makes it pleasant, I'm sure. What are the proportions? How much?
I mean, I take a mug.
Right.
I would say probably like a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. I'm really bad.
It's okay.
This is why I do narration.
Feature Caitlin's recipes, and we'll just. But afterwards, seriously,
and the honey to taste.
And the honey to taste. So water.
Yeah, as much honey.
Tablespoons or teaspoons?
Tablespoons.
Couple tablespoons of the cider vinegar.
Yeah.
And then some honey to taste.
Yeah. Well, not just to taste. I mean, honey's really good for your throat.
Right.
So you just load it in.
Just make it in the bear. Just an entire bear's worth of honey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and in this line of work too, if you're about to go into a session or something, just have a spoonful of honey. Right. It's so
like
good.
Nature's candy.
Yeah, but it really does help with this kind of work.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
I hope I answered your question, Paul.
I hopefully and again we can always throw it up in the comments later.
Yeah.
The exact recipe or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Moving on to the type of stuff that you do. We talked about the genres in which you perform. How do you find those books on ACX? How do you make a smart decision about what books you're going to audition for? Which both, I guess, by genre, what's going to be right for you, and also what you think is going to make you money is going to be a good job to take.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors, and the first one, specifically with ACX, I judge the book by its cover.
Okay, good to know.
I look at a cover that stands out to me, because if it stands out to me, maybe that is something that would stand out to a listener/reader. It's a really important part. So if it looks like a stock cover that might, you see like, oh, that woman's on a lot of book covers. Right. It's a really important part of the marketing. So if the author, rights holder, publisher, whoever it is, isn't investing in the book cover, then they're maybe not going to invest in marketing the book.
Point.
I check out the Amazon sales rank. I know that it's a system that can be gamed a little bit, but I try to check it out and see if it moves very much during the day. Personally, I look at 5,000 or lower.
Okay.
What else do I do? Oh, I do a little internet stalking of the author to see how active they are and accessible they are to people on the internet. So I look to see that they're posting regularly on Facebook and Twitter.
Right. And these are for royalty share projects?
Yeah, specifically for royalty share.
Because then you're invested in the project, and it's
exactly.
important to you how much the book sells.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
I mean, for PFH, like price per finished hour, my rate is my rate.
Right.
And that's all there is to it.
Right. So in terms of the royalty share, you're looking at the sales rank, you're looking at the cover, you're doing some research off of ACX on the author or the rights holder.
Yeah.
Those are all good tips. As far as genre goes, do you just kind of, or even genre or subject matter, do you kind of just say, okay, YA, and I'm in YA, and I'm going to do that? Or do you look for stuff where you're like, this spoke to me on a personal level, so I feel like I can act it better? Or is it just, it's sort of in my genre, and I feel like I can do that well?
There are a couple books that I have narrated about mental health.
Okay.
Whether the character herself has mental health struggles or someone close to her does, and those do speak to me.
Okay.
But again, usually, I'm looking at characters that are between the ages of 16 and 25.
Right.
I mean, if you guys want to look at my reviews, you can see... I did a book where I think the main character was 28.
And that was just 3 years too old?
Well, there are some, I don't think I was called a chipmunk, and that's okay, because sometimes I do sound like a chipmunk.
Intentionally, I imagine.
Well, sometimes it works for me, but I was like, hey now, tell me how you really feel.
Right.
But, the same reason why somebody's going to love how I tell a story is the same reason why somebody's going to not be able to listen to it.
Right.
And this one listener, unfortunately, had a bad experience, and hopefully she'll find something else she likes. But plenty of people have liked the book as well.
That's good. Right.
But I find that, it's better if I do younger characters. And going back to vocal health and things like that, if I have a character that's older or more mature, if I want to modulate my voice, I actually find that incredibly fatiguing. So
try to avoid that when you're picking books.
Exactly.
So it doesn't affect your entire...
Exactly.
Okay. Well, so talking about making smart decisions in which books you pick leads me to furthering your career, earning more money from audiobooks.
Yeah.
And we actually caught you at a very opportune time when we came to film the previous segment. You were just sort of graduating, if you will, from your home studio space in your closet, as it originally was, to a brand new in-apartment vocal booth. We have a little bit of a clip that we'd like to show, and then we'll come back and we'll ask you some more questions about that whole process. So let's take a look at that evolution of Caitlin Kelly's vocal space.
When I first moved to New York, I found out that much of this industry, voiceover, commercial, and also in audiobooks, is done at home. A lot of people have home record setups. That was very overwhelming to me, and I did tons of research to figure out what kind of mic I should buy, what kind of computer I would need to handle the processing power. And I just asked questions of anybody that was generous enough to give me their time. For 2.5 years, I recorded from my closet, and I saved up my money, and I was able to purchase a sound isolation booth. And now I feel like I'm in total luxury. I'm like driving my Cadillac. I was in my hoopty, and now I'm driving my Cadillac. And it is a world of difference. My closet was doubling as my workspace and also where I store my stuff. But now I have a specific place where I know when I go into my booth, I'm mentally locked in. I can focus on work, I can be more productive, and it's just a nicer space to record in. I have a lot less noise leaking in, a lot less noise contamination, virtually no noise contamination, which is just a huge burden off my shoulders.
So that was a really excellent look at a really exciting purchase that you've been able to make.
Yeah.
And it's ironic. I find it kind of funny that for eagle-eared listeners, you can hear in the background in that video that we can hear the police sirens in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I have to assume that's because we weren't actually in the booth with the door closed. I don't imagine that's a problem any longer now that you have that booth.
There's a little bit of bleed, but I would say probably only once a session now. Am I hearing anything, if that?
Right.
It's amazing. My
That's great.
life is...
And you're in a big city, so for somebody that's not in the middle of New York City somewhere, that probably wouldn't
And
even
it's
happen
rough. I live in downtown Brooklyn, so there's a ton of courthouses. Central booking is down there. There's a detention center down there. I mean, it is an active police area.
Right.
And it was really a struggle when I was in my closet. 2 years, guys.
Wow. So we have some questions from the audience related to the booth itself. Asking about recording techniques in the actual booth, mic distance techniques. Do you sit or stand? iPad or paper script, punch and roll. Tell me everything about your booth. Well, let's take them one at a time. So like mic distance and techniques when you're in the actual booth. How do you determine that?
Mic distance, there's kind of a rule of thumb. Every mic is going to be a little bit different. You want to find your sweet spot, but it's pretty much like this far
like the hang
away.
10 symbol.
Yeah.
Right.
So you want to be... Not this microphone.
So I was going to say, have I been
not this microphone.
No,
not this microphone. This kind of microphone, you want to be right up on it to sound good.
Right.
But for like a condenser mic, you usually want to be about this far away.
Okay.
What other questions?
Do you use a pop screen?
I
use
do.
pop filter?
On my new microphone. So my old, I was using a Shure SM7B, which is a broadcast style microphone, because I had so much noise in that space. As you can, I mean, guys, I was making it work. It's a great microphone, not wonderful for subtle nuances of audiobook delivery.
Right.
But I needed to cut out tons of noise, and that was what was going to fit my space. My new mic is an Audio-Technica 4050, and I do use a pop filter on that one. I mean, you can remove pops and all the plosives based on, I don't know if I'm popping in you guys right now, but you can remove those based on technique.
Right. Speaking technique?
Yeah.
You're not talking about like afterwards in the editing process.
No.
Okay,
I mean, it's wonderful that we have editors and engineers who can fix that for us.
Right.
But
Better to
as
get rid of it
the narrator,
in the
you
beginning,
should be working on your technique. And
can you share a specific technique for not having as many plosives or pops or anything like that?
Yeah, so a plosive is basically how forcefully you're putting the air through lips to create the P or the B, voiceless or voiced plosive. Well, you know, what do I do? Well, one thing you can do is, if it's really bad, if it's just one thing, you can just put like your finger or a pencil in front of it.
In front of what? Like in front of your mouth?
Your mouth.
Like this?
Sorry.
Okay,
yeah,
so that sort of just
between your mouth.
the air
Yeah,
somewhere
because
else.
it's gonna deflect the air away from the center of the microphone.
Right.
But for just working on it, just less air.
Okay.
You know, like you can. I really don't want to pop in you guys. I can't. I don't have on headphones. I don't know how it sounds. But you don't want to. You just do less air, and it'll be less explosive when it comes out of your mouth.
That makes sense.
Please, if you guys want to, you can
Google
ask me
it.
more about this on Twitter, or I'll try to maybe like put up a video or something.
On Twitter, you are at?
Oh, I'm at Caitlin Kelly VO.
So feel free to ask her more about it on Twitter.
Yeah.
You can explain it in text maybe a little bit better. Than,
maybe, or I'll try to like
point towards a video or resource.
Exactly.
So do you? We were talking about this actually, you and I, before the session right now. Do you stand or sit in the booth?
Oh yeah. I prefer, for different types of work, I like to stand or sit. For long form narration, I prefer to sit. Going back to your audience, I think that audiobook narration, it's very intimate. And when you're standing and you think about having more energy and a more energetic delivery, you don't want to be like shouting at somebody for 8 hours while they're listening to a book. So I like to sit and be very, like I'm just talking.
Tucked into it.
Yeah, and I'm just talking very intimately with one person specifically. I'm telling the story to one person.
Right. You said out there whispering in somebody's ear to tell them a story.
Exactly.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like right in their ear, giving them this beautiful story. For animation, though, I like to have more freedom.
Be a little more animated.
Yeah, I love to stand. But that being said, I mean, so I started doing animation and stuff. It's wonderful when you actually have the animation on the screen in front of you, and you have the ticker and you have your lines and you say it synced up with the animation, and you're standing and you can be big and loud and using your whole body.
Right.
But sometimes you're in a small booth and you don't have that luxury. So I prefer to stand for animation when I'm doing serious character work. Audiobooks, I prefer to sit. Yeah.
Great. That totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Redirecting things around to the business end. As I said, we caught you right as you were transitioning from the makeshift studio to the professional studio, or to the more
it's professional,
Let's
call it. It's professional.
It's professional. How from a career perspective, from like an earnings perspective, how did you know when you were able to make that leap? When you were sort of like, okay, I'm getting audiobook work, it's time to invest in it. You could even talk about how much did the booth cost, and like how, if you're comfortable sharing that, and how did you know when it was the right time to make that leap?
Well, for me, so you can see that space. It was really challenging, and I could hear when the toilet would flush and water, from my neighbor, and the water would go through the pipes. I could hear doors opening and closing in the hallway. It was, and not to mention like hum from my air conditioner, because it's in, what is it called in the building? Like it's not a window
It's not
unit.
central, but it's installed into the
Yeah,
wall.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yep.
It's not a window unit, and so there was always like knocking and humming and stuff coming from that unit
Right.
because it's attached to the building. Oh yeah, I forgot the question.
So the question was just generally,
How did I know?
career-wise, how did you make that leap?
Right.
Yeah.
So I found that I knew that I could physically produce more than what I was doing, and I was also not able to go after as much work as I wanted to.
Because you couldn't get the recording hours in. Because
Yeah,
of
I
the
couldn't
makeshift
count on it. I
space.
mean, there would be
Right.
times, I lived next door to a doctor and he had a subwoofer and he didn't have a normal schedule. So I would
Right.
lose my mind because he was listening to anime next door.
Right.
And I know all those
Yep.
theme songs and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose my mind. So and that's when you text your friends. You're like,
Yep. For a little bit of that. bring you
yeah,
back
your
down to
other
earth.
voiceover friends being
Right.
like, the struggle is so real right now.
Right.
And I mean, I know you guys are probably recording at night and things like that because it's more quiet or you're dealing with highway noise. If you're not
Right.
in a city, there's always something. Everybody deals with noise. Everybody.
So you were finding that you were more. You thought you could do more than you were currently able to do.
I wasn't able to take work.
Right.
I would
see.
be, what is your schedule? And then I just wanted to be able to do more.
I see. So it was something of a leap of faith. It was an investment in your future career.
Correct.
To just say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to keep working at it, and it's going to
Yes.
get me where I want to go. It's not like you
Exactly.
got there and then you were like, okay, I saved up, $1 million. Not that it was $1 million, but now it's time to. So how much did the booth cost?
Did the booth cost?
Yeah.
The booth cost just under $9,000.
Okay. And it is.
And that included, hold on, it's from an overseas maker. It's from Europe. They're made in Spain. My booth specifically.
Okay. And that company is
Studio Bricks.
Studio Bricks. Okay.
You can absolutely find something that is like half the cost. If you see in the video, that booth is in my living room. I live in a 1-bedroom. This is something that is part of
your life, your
yeah,
living space.
it's my living space. And
Right.
so not only did I want something that was easy to take apart as somebody who rents and would need to move,
Right.
and I don't want to lose the integrity of the structure and the
Right.
soundproofing quality of it. But also it needs to look good.
Right,
I
yeah.
want it to look good.
Right.
So I definitely was saving up for something specific. And that is why I went with that specific brand and model. There are other solutions for isolation booths and things like that are not nearly as much. And also, you're paying for overseas shipment and
Right.
customs and taxes, and it's just a whole other ball game. But this was absolutely, I would do this 100%. This booth could not have come soon enough. Like I'm so glad I didn't even wait a day longer to order it.
And that's the Studio Bricks 1, right?
Oh,
Because they
I
have a
have
few
the-
different models.
Yeah, I actually have the One Plus.
Oh, the 1 Plus. Okay.
Yeah, they're both the same width. They're 3 feet inside, like width-wise, and then the one is 4 feet long, and the One Plus is 5 feet long.
Okay.
And outside, it's 3.5 by 5.5.
So it's a little bit bigger, gives you a little bit more space.
Yes.
But takes up a little more space in your apartment, obviously.
Exactly, it takes up more space in my apartment. But I'm really, really glad that I went. I'm a very happy customer.
Great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And again, it'll just allow you to take more work, do more work, have fewer interruptions, pay itself back, and then further your career even farther.
Yeah, so I started working. I'll just lay this out here. I started working from my booth, I think the middle of June.
Okay.
So it's been almost 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
I will have made all the money back easily by the end
Wow.
of this month that I spent on
wow.
it.
That sounds like you took a good gamble.
Absolutely. And I will
Sounds like a
say
good
this
decision.
too. I've been networking is a huge part of this, meeting
Right.
people, building relationships.
Right.
And I went to APAC this last year in Chicago, with very specific goals of who I wanted to meet and who I felt like I was ready to connect with and who I could offer, like I had something to offer them. And I'm so grateful because that connection was made. And even since I got the booth, 2 other publishers that I hadn't anticipated working, they weren't on my goals list of 2016,
Right.
certainly on my radar, but not in my immediate goal list. And because of this booth, I believe that I've been able to get contracts with them. And even a publisher that I've been going into the city to record with them in their studios, I was able to do a home record last week
Right.
that I never would have been able to do in my closet. there's just a different level of consistency. There's amount of confidence that not only do I have for what I can produce, but
Right.
what publishers are aware of what I can produce. This. I'm gonna cry. This is like as a voiceover person, to have this in your home. This is like 100% the ultimate goal, the dream come true.
That's fantastic.
And I just, it's so beautiful.
That's great, and it really does look beautiful. It's a
Thanks.
fantastic looking booth. We're coming up on about 5 minutes left in the panel.
Okay.
So I wanted to address one audience question,
Sure.
which was, do you do foreign accents or things of that nature, and how do you handle that? Do you have to do a lot of research into that, or do you just play it subtly?
Yeah, I do some accents. What do I do? So in part of my training when I was in theater school, for my voice and speech training, we worked on IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. Which,
Not the beer.
Not the beer, no. Not the Indian Pale Ale.
Right.
The International Phonetic Alphabet, which are symbols for sounds. I did a video of IPA in Japan, so
Okay.
if any of you are really
Good internet
yeah,
sleuths.
you can find my own
It
personal.
sounds like a challenge. I don't know if that's a challenge you want to make, but
No, I'm really proud of it
Oh,
because
okay.
I go
Then,
through
yeah, then
all
go
of
find
the
it.
sounds.
Right.
So go find it. But I use that a lot to map out, and I find that the best way to map out the key of how vowels change.
I see.
But I love to watch movies and videos and things like that of native speakers, but now we have YouTube and it's
Right.
so accessible.
Right.
So I just, grab a video of somebody from that locale, wherever it is, and I
Right.
listen, because it's not just about vowel modification, it's also
Right.
cadence.
Right.
Yeah.
To make
and-
it sound natural and to
Right.
really inhabit the character.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
not
right.
only when you're doing an accent too. If the book is written in English, so somebody who understands English is listening. You don't want the accent to be so thick that it distracts and
Right.
takes away from the story and takes the reader out of it. So a lot of times I'll pick like a couple of things that to ground the accent in, so
Right.
that the listener knows where this person is from, they understand where we are, but they're not distracted by it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. And that sounds like it plays into something I hear a lot about audiobook narration is better to go subtle and to sort of hint at things rather than go cartoonish and over the top and take people out of the story,
Yeah.
distract the listener.
Yeah. And I also think, reading reviews, not of my work, but of other people's work. No, reading reviews, I think that listeners are more forgiving if you just drop the accent. Like if it says there's an
Right.
accent and you don't do it, I think they're much more forgiving than if you butcher an accent.
Right. Yeah. That again. So subtler. just,
Exactly.
play it safe.
Yeah, and I have my accents that I certainly feel much stronger in. I feel really great British and Irish. However, Scottish, I'm not going to attempt. I'm practicing. I'll do a minor character in Australian, but
Okay.
certainly not a main character.
Okay.
And yeah, did that answer the question?
It did, yeah. It sounds like you do different accents, and I'm also
Yeah.
hearing that that's another reason to keep training yourself, keep learning, because I would imagine that the more you get better at actually doing good accents, you can then take a YA book where
Yeah.
there's an Australian lead character or something
Yeah.
like that.
Oh man. If I ever get
Someday.
there someday, I know PJ Auckland in the audiobook narrator world. He's really proficient at accents. And
PJ Auckland?
Auckland.
Okay.
Oakland. Wait.
Oakland.
Yeah.
Because if people want to go look this person up on Audible, we got to make sure we get it.
OCHLAN.
OCHLAN.
I think it's Oakland. I think I said it
Okay.
wrong at first. He's really proficient, and he'll do. I know there's webinars out there of him doing
Right.
accents, but specifically for an audiobook narrator and having to sustain something for a long period of time, he's really great and fun to listen to. It's always fun to listen to somebody just go into a million different
Yeah.
accents. Yeah.
So I'll last question for the session. It flew by. It feels like I'm sad to be asking the last question. But the last thing I want to ask about the career generally is you farm out your post-production and your editing and all that.
Yes.
If you could briefly tell me why you do it that way as opposed to doing it yourself, and just how you sort of manage that workflow, why that works for you.
Yes. Okay. So I have always been interested in voiceover and acting, and as a result, the choices I've made in my life, education-wise, have been to pursue those things. I have never had a goal of being a sound engineer.
Right.
I don't know what that is, and I'm pretty sure that my doing anything to do with sound engineering or sound design or editing is like disrespectful to the entire industry.
Okay.
It's is like real serious work. So basically, I just knew I was spending a lot of time doing something I knew nothing about.
Right.
I'm really glad I took the time to research it and learn about things, so I have even more respect for what engineers do. But it is just, for me, my time is much better spent finding my job, working on a book, prepping a book, whatever it is. And I honestly, the man that I work with, his name is Tyrell Harrell, and he's based in Atlanta. And we were sat next to each other at a wedding.
Really? It was just that random?
It was totally random at a wedding in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And he used to live in New York. He now is in Atlanta. And he's amazing. Please don't book him up, everybody. Like,
You shouldn't have said his name then.
I want him
You
to.
got to shout him out.
Yeah, he's been wonderful. And he's also been really encouraging because he's, been in this, doing this much longer than I have. But I just feel very confident in what he does. And I can just send it off.
So, and how does that work quickly?
We
you
use
record,
Dropbox.
you use Dropbox, you just record the files.
I record the files, I upload to Dropbox, he grabs them. He likes WeTransfer, but I think I won and we're using Dropbox.
Okay. And again, with the magic of the interwebs, it really is just that easy. You record the files,
just that easy.
You agree on a platform to share them. He takes them. I'm sure you have to set a schedule. I need it back by X time or whatever. He works in with his workflow, and then you're just collaborating. It just works together.
We're pretty clear, he always says if it's like 10 hours, he asks for a 2-week turnaround.
Right.
And I try, if I need a rush, I'll say I'll pay you more to bump me to the front of the line.
Right. And does that work?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
That's good to know.
Yeah, we have a good relationship, but he's very clear about what he can do, and I'm very clear about what I can do and what the expectation is. And we have a really great working relationship. Obviously, I'm the only one sitting here. He might be saying something else behind my back.
I'm sure he would say the same exact thing.
He has always done wonderful work for me, and I have been very grateful for the service that I pay him for.
That's fantastic. And so aside from him, I know, and I'm sure you would agree, that in that very Facebook group that you mentioned, ACX narrators and producers, you can find freelance editors and post-producers, or at least recommendations for ones that might not be in that group. That's probably a great resource to go find somebody if you're in need of that.
Yes, it is. And I mean, this goes again, because sometimes you're flying blind and you don't know, is this person vetted or not? So this is when you really want to ask your friends, make friends, find out what they're doing. And, I would not have any of the things that I have if it wasn't for people being kind, introducing me to other people, sharing resources with me, sharing information with me. So I just want to urge all of you to be kind and generous to your fellow narrators, because they will help you. They will help you, and if there's anything I can do to help anyone, please ask me.
Caitlin Kelly VO.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great sentiment to close on, is just be kind to your fellow narrators.
Be kind, yeah. Because I really, if there's one takeaway from this whole hour, if you are still with us, thank you so much. Just, I would not have anything if it wasn't for the people I've met being kind to me and introducing me to a publisher or another narrator or a engineer, or sharing emails of people that I might want to reach out to, that kind of thing.
Right.
So
let's have that as a circle, pay it forward. And
pay it forward 100%. So ask me.
I love that sentiment.
I'll do my best. I might not share all my contacts with everybody, but certainly ask me and I'll do my best to help you if I can.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this was a great.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this was a fantastic, lively conversation. I think we covered a lot of great stuff to help everybody out there. Please come back next week for our 6th and final panel of the semester. It's Taking Your Career to the Next Level. It will feature Audible Studios' own Kat Lambrix, Jamie Matler of Blackstone, and John McElroy, as well as ACX's director Mike Stover, talking about what it takes to add other work to your audiobook portfolio in addition to the work that you're finding on ACX.
I will be watching that for sure.
You better.
That's what I need to do, my next step.
All right. Well, perfect. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.